Violence on the streets of Indonesia after a motorcycle taxi driver is run over and killed by police. The president has apologised and appealed for calm, but protests continue. What's driving the anger and how will the government respond? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Adrian Finighan. It began with the police killing of a young motorcycle rider in Jakarta on Friday, but the scale of unrest since has rocked Indonesia. Violence involving police and protesters has spread to other cities, and troops have been deployed on the streets. The sight of fellow motorcycle taxi drivers and their couriers in their uniforms at the funeral struck a chord with the public. People like the driver killed are familiar to millions, delivering to workplaces and houses across the country, part of the army of casual labour, which plays a central but poorly paid role in the economy. Apologies from the president, Prabowo Subianto, have failed to bring calm. So why is there such an eruption of anger? What wider issues are at play? And what will the president and his government do next? We'll try to find out from our guests in just a moment. But first, a report from Joel Evans.
Anti-government demonstrators are making their voices heard in Indonesia. Protests spread across the country after 21-year-old Afan Kurawan, a motorcycle taxi driver, was run over and killed by police in Jakarta on Friday. That he was a casual labourer in a low-paid job ignited fury, the demonstrators rallying against the cost of living and the lack of jobs, as well as police violence and alleged political corruption.
We're very disappointed in all law enforcement agencies, especially the police chief. Please pay attention to this. Drivers are also human, as well as commoners, as said by our lawmakers. We're very sad that one was killed, and we all felt it.
Jakarta's police chief has apologised for the death and promised a full investigation. 7 officers were found to have violated the police code of ethics. The president paid his respects to the family and attended the funeral.
On behalf of myself and the Indonesian government, I would like to express my deepest condolences and sympathy. I am deeply concerned and saddened by this incident.
There's been outrage too at revelations that members of parliament are getting a housing allowance worth more than $3,000 a month, on top of their salaries. That's 10 times the minimum wage in Jakarta. Many Indonesians see politicians as part of a corrupt elite. As well as the capital, protests have been held in Jawa Barat, Surakarta, Bandung, Lombok and Medan. Troops have joined police on the streets, using tear gas and water cannons to disperse crowds. In Makassar, in South Sulawesi province, demonstrators set fire to a regional parliament building, killing several people. Protest organisers say they want MPs' salaries cut and increased to the minimum wage in line with inflation and accountability for alleged crimes committed by police and politicians.
I pay all my taxes. I'm a tax-compliant citizen. But I don't know who my taxes are going to. The people inside the House of Representatives building don't listen to the complaints of their own people at all.
It's the biggest crisis yet for President Prabowo Subianto, who took office in October. In a video posted online, he appealed for calm and urged people to trust the government and his leadership. A call that so far seems to have fallen on deaf ears, with anger at economic difficulties and inequality showing no sign of easing. Joel Evans, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
So, who is Prabowo Subianto? Well, he was a former general in the Indonesian military, serving in the campaigns in East Timor and in West Papua, where the military was accused of war crimes and human rights abuses. Prabowo was never prosecuted, but was banned for a time from entering the US over the allegations. He moved into business and politics after being discharged honourably from the military in 1998. He campaigned unsuccessfully for the presidency twice and served as defence minister between 2019 and 2024. Prabowo was finally successful last year and became Indonesia's 8th president, but critics say that he ran a sanitised campaign using social media to promote a fatherly image. Let's bring in our guests. From Jakarta, we're joined by Abigail Limuria, co-founder of What Is Up Indonesia, a digital media platform that unpacks Indonesian sociopolitics. From Melbourne, Australia, we're joined by Vedi Hadiz, a professor of Asian Studies at the University of Melbourne. And also in Jakarta, we're joined by Wirya Adiwena, Deputy Director of Amnesty International Indonesia. A warm welcome to you all. Abigail, let's start with you. Tell us about the mood on the streets right now. How long has this anger been building and why? To what extent was the death of Afan Kurniawan the last straw for people in Indonesia?
Yeah, I think this anger definitely did not happen overnight. It's been going on, it's been building for months, and some may even argue for years. And it's all because of both economic and political frustration. As we know, Indonesia is not in a good shape economically. It is worsening. We're experiencing sort of a collapsing job market as well, where thousands has been laid off and there's a lot of unemployment. And instead of a helpful and compassionate response from their leaders, these people are continuously met with policy that worsen the situation. For example, an increase in tax that were attempted multiple times. And not only that, they were also met with indifference or even mocking and tone-deaf responses from their representative, people who are supposed to be representing their voices. And so it's not so much as the economic struggle. I feel like people are more angry at the arrogancy that they receive, and they are just fed up with being treated that way.
Vedi, the president, as we said, apologised, appealed for calm, asked people to trust the government and his leadership. Can they be trusted?
Well, he may have said that, but more recently he has instructed the chiefs of the police forces and the military forces to respond decisively to the public unrest, saying that the unrest has caused a lot of damage to public infrastructure. So I think we may be seeing a shift from the rhetoric of let's everybody work together to keep the calm to one where they might be moving towards more repressive policies.
Okay. Wirya, at the end of last year, Amnesty issued a report calling for Indonesian police to be held accountable for, quote, repeated use of force against peaceful protesters. How much of a problem is police brutality in Indonesia?
Well, that's just the thing. That report is not the first time that we had actually published a call for structural reform in the body of the police in Indonesia. We had a full-length report in 2016. We published a report in 2020 where we monitored various incidents of police excessive use of force when they use batons, tear gases, water cannons improperly against protesters. We published another one in 2022. We published another one in 2024. It seems to me that most of the things that Amnesty International Indonesia is doing is just watching the police, because so many human rights violations are conducted by police when they are facing demonstrators. And building on what Vedi has just mentioned, it is increasingly concerning because now the military is coming into the picture as well. And we know that military forces are not suited for law enforcement duties. It is unthinkable to see that the president, instead of trying to de-escalate situations, he seems to double down. It is simply unwise, I think irresponsible, and the president should have started with an actual apology that is followed by a clear, concrete action plans in which he outlined series of policies to reform the police to ensure that such things are not happen again. He didn't do that. Instead, he bring the big guns into the foray.
Abigail, people are obviously very angry. What do they want from their president and politicians? Policy reform, structural changes to governance, dialogue? And do the protesters have a united aim? I mean, some form of cohesion. At the moment, as we said, there's a lot of anger on the streets, but do the protesters have a cohesive mission?
Yeah, I think the protesters definitely have a cohesive demand. And amongst other things, the demands is for first, the state budget to be used more efficiently for programs that actually matter and not wasted on lavish benefit for the representative. And that for the state budget to have more transparency and so into what they are being used for. And they also ask for the representative, for those who have been mocking the people or who has been saying ridiculous things to be let go from the House of Representatives, and so that the representative actually represent the people, and not just elites who say whatever they want. And I think thirdly, obviously, so that the police officers who are responsible for the death of the young motorcycle driver to be held fully accountable and to receive full justice, and so that there are also some reform in the police department.
Vedi, what's gone wrong with democracy in Indonesia?
Well, the problem is that a lot of things went wrong with it from its earliest inception. If you will allow me a few seconds on this, when Suharto fell in 1998, a lot of people thought that, okay, we'll have all the nice things now, democracy, human rights, and all of that. But it's not as simple as that. The old forces that were nurtured under Suharto, the old politico-bureaucratic business alliances, simply regrouped, and they reinvented themselves as democrats and reformers, and they took over the political parties and the parliaments and the various other institutions of political and economic governance. And the reason that they've done this really is that these institutions, as they had been under authoritarianism, under democracy, still basically serves to allow these oligarchic elites to take control of institutions of the states, the authority that they have and their resources for the purposes of their own private enrichment. And this is why you see that the gap between rich and poor has been increasing, that there's a great deal of distance between those in power and the people who are ruled, and why there's a great deal of animosity towards the rulers from the ruled.
So, Vedi, what did the president mean when he urged the public to be vigilant against, quote, elements that always want to cause unrest and chaos? Could the current unrest be working to anyone's benefit politically in Indonesia? Might there be parties in whose interest it is for this to escalate?
Okay, 2 points. One is that that sort of statement talking about behind the scenes actors, and often they point to supposedly foreign actors, is taken from the old playbook of Suharto, the old dictator. He used to say that all the time. Whenever there was any public unrest, he'll say that there's some foreign interest behind it. And that is something that politicians and generals continue to say in Indonesia. But that does not mean that no matter how genuine and organic the grievances of the people are, that elites may not take advantage of them for their own purposes. And we do know that there has been intensification, at least behind the scenes, between different factions of the elites, which now, I think, are vying to try to steer the unrest in a direction that might be useful for their purposes.
Wirya, I show you both nodding and in agreement and shaking your head at one point. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, definitely, because I am in full agreement with Vedi in the sense that I am also shocked in how uncreative the current government is. they're bringing specters of new order into the current era. Indeed, the current president has been echoing Suharto's old playbook in calling legitimate criticisms against his government as foreign-funded, corruptor-backed, or only trying to sow chaos and disorder. And what we are seeing is how the government seems to be more focused, more interested really to frame legitimate and peaceful criticisms as internal enemy, as internal threat. It will seem to me that the government is more interested in ensuring that they have full control of the narratives, full control of the protests, instead of addressing the real and true concerns that the people have. It is something that really, really concerning if we look at how just recently the government passed the army law as well, in which the government managed to quietly, creepingly push the army back into civilian lives, where army now has more control, more presence really in civilian government. So I guess it is what it is. We're looking at not only a responsible government in the way that they are doubling down on protests, we are also looking at how they are uncreative in bringing back old playbooks.
Abigail, what are your thoughts on what both Vedi and Wirya were saying? Has the police's use of force against protesters this week revived people's fears that democracy and civil rights would suffer under President Prabowo?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about what hidden actor or foreign actor behind this that the government is accusing of this movement, but I know for sure that the people's anger is real. The people have been asking for change, have been asking for reformation for months and even maybe years, and they've been asking it peacefully. They've been doing diplomacy and things like that, but it seems like it keeps on falling on deaf ear. And so now the people are angry. They don't know how else to ask for help, and so they took it to the street and they took it to the protests. And I do believe that seeing this, like, this movement is organic. It's not made up. It's not paid actors. The people are real. I see a lot of people who, like musician, actors, influencers, even beauty creators, they're all speaking out, because it's not just labor protest. It's not just a student protest. It's not just the worker class that are frustrated. It is a collective frustration that cuts through all layers of society. People are fed up with how things are.
Vedi, how much of what's happening right now is the fault of the president? He's been in power, 10 months? Why has he failed to do so far what he said he'd do before he was elected and improve the living standard of ordinary Indonesians? That's why he was elected, right?
Well, first of all, doing things such as tackling corruption fundamentally, making sure that we have what is often called good governance and so on, is not actually in the interests of Indonesia's elites, including, I would say, the alliance around Prabowo. I mean, the Indonesian political economy is actually driven by the logic of systematic, massive corruption at all levels. So it would take a lot to actually dismantle all of this, especially since your origins really is within that system. Remember, he was Suharto's son-in-law. Secondly, he has actually created a situation where Indonesia's fiscal situation has become more unstable than it should have been. Now, under Jokowi, Indonesia's debt has increased, right? Foreign as well as domestic. That was to fund infrastructure projects, some social services, and so on. But under Prabowo, what he's done now is to go into all of these populist projects, like he calls this the nutritious food project for poor children and so on. This is taking a heck of a lot of money from the national budget. It's cutting services from the people and so on, and diverting funds into what are actually white elephant projects designed to make sure that he develops a popular base of support independent of prior President Jokowi, who was responsible really for getting him elected in the first place. And these two are having a conflict right now.
Wirya, as we said back at the beginning of our discussion, President Prabowo had previously been accused of human rights violations in the late 1990s. What's Amnesty's view about where human rights are headed under him in Indonesia? Are you pessimistic, optimistic?
Well, I think we echo what everyone is having in their minds in terms of human rights, in that we are extremely, extremely concerned. I mentioned fleetingly about the passing of the army law. I think that is something that we should be very concerned about with the existence of military in civilian affairs, normalizations of the military presence in civilian affairs, including in public health, narcotics, and so on and so forth. But we are also looking at the coming criminal procedure bills which will expand potentially police and attorney power in Indonesia's judicial system. And those are things that are happening under the president. And looking at excessive use of police force, you were talking about earlier whether the president is responsible or not. Well, Adrian, I think the answer should be very simple. Of course, the president is responsible. He is the boss of the national police chief. And when we are looking at continuous failures in reforming the police, or probably not even reforming the police, ensuring that police face demonstrations properly, not using improper use of force, unnecessary and excessive use of force continuously from years to years to years. Well, we are looking at continuous failures on the behalf of the police, but when this kind of failures are persisting throughout the years, well, then we should take a look at who is responsible at the top, because the accountability finally at the end should go all the way to the top. And what is very troubling for me as well, right now, today, we are very angry because of the death of Afan, the motorcycle driver. But in 2022, the nation was also angry with the death of 135 people in Malang in the Kanjuruhan Stadium, because improper use of tear gas has pushed the crowd there into panic and into stampede. What did we learn? Nothing. Because tear gases continued to be used improperly. In Rempang, it came into schools. In Dagoelos, in Bandung, it came into people's houses. In yesterday's protest, it came into stations. We found footages where the police potentially used a quick release tear gas, which is a tear gas with small number of explosives that has been banned in France. If it is true, well, it is a very dangerous use of tear gas, because in France, it has caused many of hands permanently injured and disabled. So just one example of one less lethal weapon shows that the government does not learn. So what?
Okay.
If we look at the bigger picture, of course, Amnesty is concerned.
Yep.
And of course, the people are concerned.
Abigail, what's the feeling? Can the government diffuse this peacefully, do you think? Or are we going to see more repression, police violence to stop this? Will it stop? Or are we looking at a period of unrest in Indonesia?
I mean, looking at the trajectory and the things that the president has recently said, unfortunately, I feel like the trajectory is not really looking so well. Although I still think that the government still have a chance to meet people where they are and actually diffuse the situation. What people want is not more policing or more repression. What people want is simply for the representative to meet them where they are, to listen to their aspiration as per their job. And instead, what do we get? The House of Representative member are fleeing abroad, and some were seen doing shopping spree. in China, and some were seen fleeing to Singapore or doing like work field trip to Australia, while people are literally protesting, asking for them to hear their voice. And so I think if the president can somehow urge the House of Representative member to actually listen to the people, I feel like the people would actually feel like the situation would actually diffuse, because that's what actually instigating the violence. But not only that, also the justice and the accountability that I talked about earlier about about police brutality and the murder that took place during this protest. It needs to be addressed, and I feel like people will not stop until the government fully acknowledge these demands. But unfortunately, it's so far from seeing how they're responding, it's not looking so well.
Okay. Vedi, what's your feeling about where this is going? Will the government listen to people's legitimate grievances? Are they in any mood to listen?
First of all, it was mentioned that a lot of the anger finally erupted because of the new perks that the members of parliament would be receiving, and it was considered to be them giving a gift to themselves, whilst a lot of people were still, toiling in misery and poverty. What a lot of people forget is that those perks had to be approved by the government. So it had to be approved by Prabowo. And as people have, sort of attacked the parliament for doing what it did for the purposes of enriching parliamentarians, they forget that this is also part of Prabowo's ploy to buy off parliament, to buy off parliamentary support for his policies, a lot of which are really difficult to implement in the context of a very tight budget. Now, what is going to be
very quickly? We're almost out. Very quickly. Yep.
Okay. I think what will happen is that the chief of police will likely go. I think that the benefits for the parliamentarians will be reappraised, but I think there will be more repression and authoritarianism, and Prabowo will use this as a pretext to implement those things.
We must end it. Many thanks indeed for being with us. Abigail, Limuria, Vedi, Hadiz, and Wirya, Adiwena. Thanks for watching. You can see the programme again at any time by going to the website. That's at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, you can join us at our Facebook page at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And of course, you can join the conversation on X. Our handle there at AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finighan, and the team here in Doha. We'll see you again. Bye for now.
Don't miss out. Get a full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.